Good morning, everyone. My name is Cynthia Hinman, and today we are going to do some training on the highest emergency rating and how it applies to WebOMS now. We will get started promptly here. I am joined by Mo Monetry, who is my producer, and she'll be monitoring the chat. And also looking for any hands that are raised, and we'll make sure when we get to breaks to stop for questions. So please, if you are not on mute, please mute yourself. And Mo, if there are folks in the lobby, if you could continue to just let them in, I'd appreciate it, or open up the lobby. Additionally, there are a number of subject matter experts on the phone who are going to assist me if I have questions that I can't answer. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand, as I mentioned, and when we get to certain stopping points, we'll take those questions verbally. You can also write them in the chat as well, if you'd like. This material is going to be posted on the ISO website in our training center. I am recording this, and the recording also will be posted on the website. The presentation is not there yet, but it should be very soon. And of course, if we have updates to it after we finish this training, we'll post the updated material. So today we're going to cover the scope of this project. We're going to do a little comparison between this one and other projects, and then we will talk about the changes to WebOMS, and we'll talk a little bit about participating in the market sim. I think this should wrap up pretty quickly, but so we have plenty of time if you have questions. This impacts our transmission owners and transmission operators that have read-write access to WebOMS. I believe that other customers that have WebOMS, that are like generator owners putting in generator outages, will not even see these screens. So it will only apply to our TOs and TOPs. So first, I'm going to do a little comparison. I shamelessly stole a slide from one of our system operator trainers. So we'll go over that, and then we'll talk about some specifics of the HER, or Highest Emergency Rating project. It is baseball season, and so we're going to use a baseball analogy, although my team is not in the World Series. We'll start with, it says who's on first, but we're actually going to start with third base here with the system operating limits methodology and what some of the projects we're working on and how they overlap and what the purpose of each one of them is and how the highest emergency rating initiative fits into that. So first there's FERC 881, and that requires transmission providers to adopt more precise and dynamic line rating methodologies using real-time or near real-time data. So this is a FERC order that we have to bring up our standards up to. So the goal is to improve transparency and accuracy. So this concerns updating and improving the practice of line ratings. Then the next one that you hear about is FAC 11. This is a reliability standard developed by NERC, and it deals with how facility ratings should be calculated and documented. So this one concerns developing a standardized approach to determining line ratings and requires an associated rating duration for applicable equipment. Now finally, we have HER, the Highest Emergency Rating Initiative. This is an ISO project that's devoted to update the functionality to reduce some workarounds that we currently have. So it really is concerned with providing the ability for WebOMS users to adjust the highest emergency rating duration, and the emergency rating. So the goal of this project is that currently there were no fields for emergency rating duration, highest emergency rating, or highest emergency rating duration in WebOMS. This information was entered manually and then updated in eMNA. So the solution that this project provides is that it adds fields in WebOMS for these items, and it links the fields in WebOMS to eMNA and EMS. It also, when things are updated, these fields are updated in WebOMS, they're also going to be updated in HANA. So for those of you that are HANA users, you'll want to know that that is also happening. So what do we mean by highest emergency rating? Well, here we have a line XY. I have a table here on the left. Its normal rating value is 100 megawatts, and the duration is continuous for normal. The emergency rating is at 120, and it needs to be reduced below 100 within 4 hours. That's the emergency rating, or 240 minutes. The highest emergency rating, that's 140 megawatts. If the flow exceeds 140 megawatts, it must be mitigated immediately. So the flow, so from the bullets on the right, the flow must be reduced below 100 megawatts within 4 hours. And if the flow, let's say in this example, the flow is 130 megawatts, well, then the mitigation time is 30 minutes to get it down below 100 megawatts, right? Because it's above the emergency rating already. And if the flow exceeds 140 megawatts, it must be mitigated below 100 immediately. And of course, we have caveats to that. I have the asterisk there on the bottom, and it says unless the transmission operator provides a less stringent facility ratings methodology, which allows additional mitigation time once flows have been reduced below 140 megawatts. So just keep that in mind. So before we move on to actually looking at the fields in WebOMS, I am going to open it up to questions. If you have a question, you can raise your hand or you can write it in the chat.
Yeah, I don't see any questions in the chat, but let me check to see if we have any hands raised. I'm not seeing any at this time, so back to you, Cindy.
Thank you, Mo. And we'll continue on, and there will be other opportunities to ask questions if something comes up. So now let's look at OMS, WebOMS, and see what's going to be different here. So here's your WebOMS screen that will be adjusted. You can see that the first one I have highlighted here with the red box around it is the emergency rating duration in minutes. So that is an integer that you will enter in and set in minutes. Then we've got the highest emergency rating, which is new as well, and that will be a numeric input of megawatts. That's going to be followed by the highest emergency rating duration. Again, another integer, 7 megawatts. So simply put, the screen existed, you all were using it before, but now we're going to add these 3 fields so that you can update the emergency rating duration and the highest emergency rating and the highest emergency rating duration yourself rather than having us do it and then update other systems. So users will have the capability to adjust these values through the UI and the API, both. And again, reminder that when you update these values in WebOMS, they're also going to feed to HANA as well. There are some validation rules associated with these fields, and most of them seem pretty intuitive, but we'll go over them a little bit. The normal rating limit has to be defined. There has to be something in that field. The emergency rating limit and duration need to be defined. You can't leave that blank either at this point. The emergency rating limit can't be less than the normal rating limit. If the highest emergency rating limit and duration are not defined, the system is going to autofill them with the HER limit and duration values to match their associated emergency rating limit and duration values. The HER limit cannot be less than the associated emergency rating limit. Makes sense. And the HER duration cannot be greater than its associated emergency rating duration. I don't think there's anything surprising there, but we'll stop in a minute and see if there are any questions about this. Additionally, there is a pop-up. When you are creating or modifying an equipment D rate, there's a pop-up that's going to come on the bottom of the screen, and you can see it there. And it's indicating that the emergency rating flows to market, RTCA, and EMS, while the HER only flows to the RTCA and EMS. This message also comes up in the API as well. Speaking of the API, these are the services for the highest emergency rating. So those are there. When the presentation's posted, you'll have those available. They're probably on the developer website as well. Any questions about anything I just reviewed? We're going to talk about the market sim next. So, questions. I see Doug. You want to unmute and ask a question?
It's Doug Campbell, Arizona Public Service. So so you're always operating to using the highest available emergency rating, or like you're not going to call entities with issues with SOLs if they're above post contingent maybe the longer duration as long as you're below the highest. It's just informational to have the intermediate kind of emergency.
Yeah, I can take this one. This is Cody Smith, Grid Operations Manager with RC West. And you're correct on RTCA. The SOL methodology says that if you're over the highest emergency rating in RTCA, then it's an SOL violation. And the TOP has 30 minutes to mitigate on their own before it's required to communicate with the RC. Doesn't mean you should always wait until you've been over that for 30 minutes. But we have the normal and the emergency primarily for real-time overloads. If we go over the normal rating, you have the duration of your first emergency rating before it's a SOL violation. And then if you go over the highest emergency rating, it's immediately an SOL violation. So we do use all three. They'll be in RTCA and HANA.
Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying. And I didn't quite catch, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but what the market is using and binding to. Is it also the highest available emergency?
That, I believe, can be per entity. I'm not as familiar with the market. I don't know if anybody else on here could speak more clearly.
I'll jump in with that one. No, the market uses the emergency rating column. That's what that pop up there is, just to make sure that everybody knows that and reminds everyone that if you want the market to respect the rating, make sure to use or fill out the emergency rating column. That's what the market will drive to.
The emergency or the highest available emergency rating?
The emergency. Can you go back a couple slides to where we got all the fields there?
You're talking about this one?
Yeah.
With the pop-up? Yeah.
Maybe like two. Keep going back and I'll let you know. That one right there. Okay, so the emergency rating right there, that's what the market will respect. And then what happened is if you leave the highest emergency rating and highest emergency rating duration available, or if you leave those blank, then it will auto-fill those with whatever's in the emergency rating. So if you just want to, if it's everything's the same across your emergency rating and highest emergency rating. All you need to do is fill out the emergency rating and emergency rating duration, and the market will respect that as well as RTCA.
Did that
Got
answer
it.
your question, Doug?
I think it depends on what the entity chooses to submit. If they happen to choose to submit the emergency as being our highest available, but maybe we have a 4-hour available that just isn't submitted. Yeah, the RC is not going to know about that, so you're going to operate to whatever we had submitted, even if we do have a longer term available that just wasn't in there.
Okay, sure. You can go if you want the market to respect something, fill out the emergency rating. If you want something for RTCA, then fill out the highest emergency rating. That's what the RC will call you on, is the highest emergency rating. But you can mitigate earlier than that with the market by filling out the emergency rating.
Okay, thank you. I think that clarifies. Thanks.
All right, Doug. And thank you. I don't see an Sandman. You want to unmute? Ask your question.
Yeah, this is Salman Rokhale from Portland General Electric. The question was for entities, I guess, who don't have a 4-hour rating. For us, like PGE, we use a 30-minute emergency rating. So what the expectation would be is for us to basically use that rating and populate it into the highest emergency rating. And then the OMS is basically going to copy that into the emergency duration. Is that correct, or do we continue sending our emergency rating as 30 minutes? And can the OMS populate the highest emergency rating also with the same value? I guess what I'm just asking is, do we need to change anything in terms of how we are submitting information today with our emergency rating?
So my understanding is that you can go in and change those fields in WebOMS to make them what they should be. I'll let one of the subject matter experts jump in and see if you have anything to add to that. Yeah.
Okay. As far as auto-populating, it'll only work one way. So if you fill out the emergency rating and the emergency rating duration, and you leave the highest emergency rating and highest emergency rating blank, it will populate the highest emergency rating and highest emergency rating with whatever you put in the emergency rating and emergency rating duration, but it won't go the other way around. So, if you need, if you're talking about what you want for the RC to honor your SOL, then that needs to be the highest emergency rating and highest emergency rating duration. So if you have like a 30-minute one, which you were talking about, and that's what the true SOL is, that you're reporting to the RC, then you fill out that, the highest emergency rating and highest emergency rating duration.
Got it. So Jason, in that sense, then what would the market use if we are just doing the highest emergency rating as a 30-minute rating? We leave the emergency rating as blank, and then the continuous rating is there.
You can't leave the emergency rating and the emergency rating duration blank if you fill out the highest emergency rating and highest emergency rating duration. You have to fill out the emergency rating duration. Now, if it's the same, then just fill in the same.
Yeah, so I think that's what I was trying to get to, since for entities like us, we don't have a 4-hour rating, our emergency rating and highest emergency rating would effectively be the same 30 minutes rating. So in this case, the market as well as the RC would be using the 30-minute rating if we do this approach.
Yes, if they are the same, that is correct.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions?
Yeah, I don't see any questions in the chat, and I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Back to you.
All right. Go ahead. Sorry. Okay, I thought I heard somebody. You'll have another opportunity to ask questions before we're done here if we missed you. So what do you need to do if you're going to participate in the market sim? So the BRS on this was posted way back in April, and today we're doing the training. The market simulation is going to start next, I think that's next week on the 4th, and run through the 15th with a scheduled production activation date of 12/4 of 2024. So we're definitely trying to get this done before the end of this year. So if you want to participate in the market sim, please sign up as soon as possible, let us know, and test those new fields in WebOMS. Adjust the emergency rating duration, the HER and the HER duration, and that'll be in our map stage environment, so you can play around with that. And if you have any questions or concerns after this training or during the market sim, you submit those questions and concerns via City, our City application. So additionally, I would highly recommend that you participate in our market simulation forum calls if you're participating in the market sim. They occur on Mondays and Thursdays generally. If you look on the ISO website, on our calendar, you can see if there is a meeting on a Monday or Thursday, and they're generally at 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It kind of moves around, but generally speaking, Mondays and Thursdays. Especially if you have questions, I would highly encourage you to participate in the market simulation forum calls. After go live, I would recommend that you check those fields in WebOMS and make sure that they are correct and have the values that you intend for them to have. And then, of course, now you have the ability to update the fields, these data elements, if you need to. If you have questions during the market sim, and let's say your question doesn't actually have to do with the market sim, but more about the overall release or the theory of why we're doing what we're doing, things like that. So inquiries that are not directly related to that market simulation, but they have to do with HER, I would recommend if you go into City in the functional environment, choose release for your question. If they do have to do with the market sim, if your questions have to do with the market sim directly, choose the functional environment, and this is on the bottom of the screen, for market simulation. This way we are ensured that these questions go to the right department. So I highly recommend that you use those. We also have email addresses that you can see on the screen, release@caiso.com. for release questions, and marketsim@caiso.com for market simulation questions. I will open it up for final questions, and just happy to answer anything that we can.
As a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question in the chat, please feel free to add your questions there or use the hand raise icon to verbalize your question. Cindy, at this time, I don't see any questions in the chat. I'm scanning. Oh, there's a hand. Salman, please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, just a follow-up question there was, are we expected to manually update these for all our facilities, or is there a batch update we could do if it's tied to, I guess with any of your technical specifications allows for that to happen?
That is a great question. I'm going to hand that over to one of my SMEs. Is there a batch update for doing this, or can we do it using the API?
I believe this is coming into the model is where it's getting populated from initially. So we need to verify that, if you do have this data, that it is present in the tool. And if it's not, or if the information changes, say there's an outage derate, something like that, then it can be updated. And OMS has the capability of updating our other tools. That's really the functionality we've been waiting for there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess where I was gonna try to get to it is maybe Cody, you hit on it, is currently we submit this information through our network model updates. Is there going to be an additional field added in that template to include the highest emergency rating for entities, facilities? Or is it something we have to do only like in WebOMS and we continue to submit information like what we are doing today?
I wish we had somebody from EMMS, our model here, but I believe this was already done with the new template
I
that
can
went
answer
out.
that.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a new template, and you have the option to include duration, and actually there's also, you can have 1 normal and 4 emergencies on that template. So whichever one is the highest one will be considered the highest emergency rating.
Additionally, I got a message that it's part of the FNM model as well.
Yeah.
Does that help you?
I think so. Yeah, I'll check
Great.
with our network model teams to make sure we're using the most updated templates for that.
All right. Thank you. Saurabh, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Cindy, for this wonderful training. One question I had was for production activation. I'm sorry, I'm jumping a little ahead. Let's assume if an entity, does not have the need to model HER or the emergency rate is what they want to stick with. Do they have to do something, or if nobody, if they don't participate or whatnot, and it's just business as usual for them in December when this thing goes live?
You're saying if they don't have these fields to a requirement to fill them in, then I would say that it is business as usual. Again, I'll defer to Cody or Scott or anybody who wants to jump in.
I believe that was covered in that case. If you, on your equipment, if you have a normal and emergency rating, whatever you have as the emergency rating will populate as the highest emergency rating as well.
Right. That's.
I think it's the time field. It's the time field, right? That there's a new time field being created for emergency rating, right?
Right. So that we do need, if you have an emergency rating that is not continuous, we need to know what the duration for that emergency rating is.
Okay, thank you. We'll assess. I'll assess it with my team and move accordingly. Thank you.
And I'll just add one other thing. If the emergency rating is continuous, then you put a 0 in there.
Thank you.
Right. Doug, I see your hand is raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to just clarify for sure. So if we had a 4-hour and a 30-minute, by submitting the 4-hour as the emergency and the 30-minute as the highest available emergency, we would then not be able to use that 30-minute in the market if we wanted, right? So that's kind of a downside of submitting an HER that's higher than the regular emergency.
Yes, I agree with that. And there was a lot of internal and external discussion on that, on which one to use for the market. And it was decided to use the first emergency just because, market is forward looking and all of that that goes into it. So it was, I guess, agreed to for reliability to use the emergency rating for the market control. If you do have a higher limit and you want to control differently, I believe there are, ways in the market for conformance and such to do so.
I see. You could make a conformance to effectively change it to a different rating. My follow-up question was, well, is highest available emergency rating, like today in the SIM file submittals we do for models, there's normal emergency we send. Is highest available emergency something we can submit in our sim submissions, or is it only in that template?
I can add to that. So the SIM model, we're moving from using the operational limit set with the apparent power high 1, 2, 3, and 4 to analog limit sets, which gives us the ability to have the 1 normal and 4 emergencies on the analog limit set, and also to move to 4 seasons as well. So you will be able to submit them through the SIM model, but you would need a enhancement to your SIM to use analog limit sets instead of operational limit sets.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Doug, great question. I don't see any other hands raised. Mo, do you see anything else here?
No further, there's no other hands raised, and there's no questions in the chat box. Back to you, Cindy.
All right, thank you, Mo. And
I think I just saw a comment about asking if this is going to be published.
yes, it will be published on the ISO website, and also the recording will be published as well, Kevin. Anything else? I want to thank you for your participation. One other thing I want to add is that there is a survey that Mo will put a link in the chat. I'm going to jump right to it here. Really appreciate it if you fill that out, because that's going to help us improve in the future. I want to hear what you liked about the training, what you didn't like. It's a really short survey, but I would really appreciate it if you could take a few minutes to fill it out. And overall, I thank you for your time. Again, if you have any questions about the information in the training material, you can send an email to customerreadiness@caiso.com. If you have questions, as we mentioned before, having to do with the release or with the Market Sim, you can submit a city ticket. Or if you have a scheduling coordinator or are a scheduling coordinator, they can submit a city ticket. Or last resort, there were some email addresses available to you as well on a previous slide, but also on caiso.com, there is a contact us page, and you can fill in your question there, and it essentially submits a city ticket for you. So I have some references here on the next slide. So if you want to look more into this particular initiative, the BRS, the Business Requirement Specification, is out there for you to review, as well as those SOL methodology for the Operations Horizon. And I'm looking, I don't see any other questions in the chat or hands raised, but I'll confirm with Mo. Mo, you got anything for me?
I don't see anything in the chat box, and I'm not seeing anything in the, also no hand raised as well. Back to you, Cindy.
All right. Thank you, and thank you to all my subject matter experts for helping me out, and thank you all for participating in this training. Until next time then, have a good day.